and spent the past 5 years in Detroit, serving as their OC for the past 3 games with head coach openings, shedding a tear today. Now, former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson will be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. That is very...
After setting almost 30 interviews with each and every possible head coaching candidate, it seems like the Chicago Bears finally made their decision. And this decision can change the landscape of not only the NFC North, but the entire NFL for years to come. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NFL news to your device. This is our second upload of the day. We've been double uploading because of the playoffs and the recent NFL head coaching news coming out. And we still have free agency. We have trades that are going to be coming up. We have the NFL draft. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of that, make sure you subscribe and have your notifications on. And now that we got all that out of the way, you guys have been blowing up my DMs on Instagram about the success we've been having because we dominated the NFL divisional round and in the NBA on Prize Picks. For the NFL, I was able to turn $45 into $365, and we've been posting picks for the NBA every day and been having crazy success. I promise to God, I just figured out a brand new projection model that gets us hitting more consistently, and we've been making some good money as a result of it. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, use my promo code Mikerophone to get a free $50 when you make an entry of $5 or more. Then go to my Instagram page and check my story because I give away my picks over there. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? You wouldn't have thought it prior to the 2024 NFL draft, but this could very well go down as one of the greatest NFL draft quarterback classes in recent memory. We've never seen a QB class like this before, and the only class I could really think that even comes close to this was the 2004 NFL draft's QB class. The very #1 overall pick was Caleb Williams, a player that was supposed to be the next coming of Patrick Mahomes. Just look at his USC tape, his improvisational ability, his ability to make plays when things break down. He's definitely the next coming of Patrick Mahomes. But at the very minimum, he was a 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, and the #2 overall pick was the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels, who took the Washington Commanders all the way to the NFC Championship, despite them having some very clear holes on their roster. We have a whole separate video on the Detroit Lions collapse versus the Washington Commanders, and even though they're my division rival, I have to give credit where credit's due. The one-year rebuild of the Washington Commanders is one of the most impressive things I think I've ever seen as a football fan, and I'm happy for Commanders fans. But then you have Drake May at #3 overall, who has definitely fulfilled his potential so far, but has one of the weakest supporting casts. You have Michael Penix, who looked promising in his brief tenure with the Atlanta Falcons, and they're willing to move on to him next year. JJ McCarthy is going to get the keys to the Minnesota Vikings franchise as well, and Bo Nix surprised many NFL teams this year, leading the Denver Broncos to a playoff appearance in his first year under center, in a year that we expected the Denver Broncos to be terrible. But the two QBs that are forever going to be linked together is always going to be Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. In the very beginning of the NFL draft, we thought that the Washington Commanders were going to make a play for Caleb Williams. We thought that they were going to try to trade up to #1 overall and reunite Caleb Williams with Cliff Kingsbury. But alas, we found out that the Commanders had Jaden Daniels at the very top of their draft boards over Caleb Williams. There's no question about it. Out of every single quarterback that was selected #1 overall in recent history, I don't think there's ever been a quarterback that's gone to a better situation at #1 overall than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams wasn't going to a team that was completely depleted. He was going to a team that had a true #1 wide receiver, traded for a future Hall of Famer in Keenan Allen, and even had draft capital to select Rome Odunze at #9 overall, boasting the most impressive wide receiver core in the entire NFL. Now looking back, if they selected Brock Bowers instead, it may have been slightly better, but this team also brought in DeAndre Swift and looked like a threat to win the NFC North. And alas, they had one of the most difficult seasons out of every team in the NFL. And a huge part of it has to do with who they decided to hire to develop Caleb Williams. I mean, they had their pick of the litter in terms of offensive coordinators. They could have brought in Cliff Kingsbury even, but they decided to hire Shane Waldron. And if you just take a look at this interview from Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was coached by Shane Waldron last year, you can understand why this is a questionable hire.
Bears fans are super interested about the offensive coordinator coming in, Shane Waldron. What can you tell them about who they just hired to try to get this offense where it needs to go?
This is live?
Yeah, we're not live. We're not live.
I'm playing.
I mean, I've shown you this before. Jackson Smith-Njigba broke out this past year when he didn't have Shane Waldron as an offensive coordinator. I mean, when you just take a look at his route tree with Waldron and then after Waldron, and then you compare DJ Moore's route tree before Waldron and after Waldron, you can see why this could potentially be a problem. Throughout the season, the Chicago Bears had a series of heartbreaking losses. And the crazy part is there were games that Caleb Williams actually performed particularly well. Whether it was losing to Jaden Daniels on a Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels, making crucial special teams errors versus the Minnesota Vikings, and forcing overtime and losing to the Minnesota Vikings in overtime, losing because of a blocked field goal, or even more embarrassingly, losing because they forgot to call timeout on national TV, which resulted in the firing of their head coach Matt Eberflus. It seems like this has been a season from hell for Caleb Williams. Despite him having the better roster around him, it's clear that his head coaching staff wasn't what it needed to be in order to be successful. On top of that, the Chicago Bears had one of the worst offensive lines in the entire NFL. The combination of that led to a relatively pedestrian season from Caleb Williams when you compare it to Jaden Daniels. Now, I want to be abundantly clear, these aren't draft bust numbers. I mean, he threw for 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He took care of the football. He had 3,500 passing yards, and that's with an incompetent coaching staff. But it's just really fascinating when you compare these two. I mean, Jaden Daniels had a 69% completion percentage, threw for over 3,500 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Clearly had less weapons than Caleb Williams. His top wide receivers, Terry McLaurin. He has a 34-year-old Zach Ertz. He has Brian Robinson and a dinosaur in Austin Eckler as his running backs. His offensive line isn't necessarily all world either, but he has Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury coaching him. So going into this offseason, the Chicago Bears knew that they had a plethora of problems that they needed to fix, especially if they wanted to compete in the most competitive division in the entire NFL. And fortunately for them, they had an opportunity to make one of their division rivals weaker, also making themselves significantly stronger. I've said this multiple times throughout the past year that the number one head coaching candidate was Ben Johnson. And there was no question about it that Caleb Williams really wanted Ben Johnson as his head coach. I mean, people were even prank calling Caleb Williams pretending to be Ben Johnson. Like, this guy texted him saying, "Hey Caleb, this is Ben Johnson. Just wanted to reach out ahead of time before it gets released to the media. I will be taking the head coaching job. Very excited to work with you in the future. Great things." Caleb actually bought it, said, "Actually, Ben?" And then he says, "Yes, I wanted you to be the first to know. We'll talk more as the season winds down." Caleb said, "Okay, cool. Sounds good. I'm definitely excited for the future. Let's get this shit going and turn it around and do what hasn't been done in years. In the meantime, go kill. We'll talk soon." Then they FaceTime Caleb Williams, and this is what would happen.
Hey, Caleb, it's me, Ben Johnson.
Come to the Dolphins, bro.
No, shut up. Hey, you're a great QB, but I'm so glad that you're gonna get a new head coach. I don't know if it's Ben Johnson, but I'm sorry about this.
Oh yeah. Peace out.
So there's no question that Caleb Williams truly wants Ben Johnson as his head coach, even though he also stated that he supports Cliff Kingsbury getting hired.
Yeah, I'd say I've been around Cliff. I know what type of guy he is. I know that he loves football. I know that he wants to win. He's a competitor, and so many different aspects that I was just speaking about. I've been around him, so asking him questions and things like that. I think obviously if he was here, I'd probably have more to say. But I think he fits a bunch of those qualities.
So after 3 off seasons where Ben Johnson was the leading head coaching candidate after turning down an opportunity to be the Washington Commanders head coach last offseason, presumably because he wanted the Washington Commanders to keep Sam Howell as their starting QB, it seems like Ben Johnson officially made his decision just 2 days after the Detroit Lions choked to the Washington Commanders. Fitting, as according to Adam Schefter, Chicago is finalizing a deal to hire Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as its next head coach, sources tell ESPN. The Bears are getting their man. Personally, I think this is a home run hire, and obviously Ben Johnson knows what he's getting into because now he goes from being the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions to being the head coach of their division rival, meaning Ben Johnson has already had the opportunity to see Caleb Williams up close and personal. No, not that up close and personal, you freaks. But Ben Johnson faced off against Caleb Williams twice this past year, and it seems like he's been very impressed by his ability.
It's been difficult to sit down and just study every throw, but plenty of crossover tape over the course of the year, and there's no question this guy's talented. I remember standing on the sideline last game and just you can hear the ball whistle by you. He's got quite a fastball and has some creativity to him, can extend plays, and is accurate down the field as well. So, like I said, I haven't really dove in and can tell you much more beyond that, but he's been impressive from afar.
We're gonna come out with a completely separate video about how this affects the Detroit Lions. I said in my video in the Detroit Lions collapse versus the Washington Commanders that this team's gonna get significantly weaker in their head coaching staff and their roster, and we'll have another video on that later this week where we go a little bit more in depth and we don't focus as much on the Lions versus Commanders game in particular. But it's really cool. A few months ago, we made a video on how Ben Johnson designed this crazy trick play against the Chicago Bears, where Jared Goff pretended to fumble the football and then threw a touchdown pass to Sam Laporta. And now Ben Johnson's going to be the one designing these same trick plays that the Detroit Lions became famous for. If you ask my opinion, this is an A+ hire for the Chicago Bears. This team interviewed, no joke, 30 head coaches over this past offseason, and it's kind of crazy how diverse some of these interviews were. From Brian Flores inquiring about Mike Tomlin's trade availability, interviewing Joe Brady, interviewing Todd Monken, Mike McCarthy, Arthur Smith, David Shaw. They interviewed their interim head coach Thomas Brown, Adam Stenovich, Ted Lasso, Marcus Freeman, Ron Rivera, Aaron Glenn, Mike Kafka, Pete Carroll, Anthony Weaver, Drew Petzing, Cliff Kingsbury, Mike Vrabel, Matt Campbell, and probably the most interesting name on this list is legendary Tennessee Titans running back Eddie George, who I didn't even know was a head coach currently. They did a very thorough search before they settled on their man, Ben Johnson, and I think this is a home run hire. I mean, if you just take a look at what Caleb Williams was able to do this past year with an incompetent head coaching staff, you can only imagine what he can do with an individual that's actually creative in his play design. But on top of that, the Chicago Bears have the 5th highest cap space in the entire NFL, and they have the opportunity to further bolster their offensive line. One of the top free agents in this year's free agency class is Kansas City Chiefs guard Trey Smith. He's only 25 years old and is probably looking for a deal around $20 million. Pro Football Focus gives him a 68.7 pass blocking grade, and if the Bears need additional blindside protection, they could also pursue Ronnie Stanley from the Baltimore Ravens. This plus Ben Johnson and the wide receiver core that the Bears already have, plus the promising pieces they have on defense, in addition to the fact that they have the number 10 overall pick in the NFL draft, should do wonders in pushing the Bears to the very, very top of the NFC North if they fulfill their potential. The NFC North is going to be a huge wild card next year. I mean, who knows how many games the Detroit Lions are going to be able to win, considering the fact that they're going to lose Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson and multiple of their free agents. Who knows how good the Minnesota Vikings are going to be in year one of the JJ McCarthy era. The Green Bay Packers could easily win 10 or 11 games, but don't be shocked if the Chicago Bears finally take that step forward to the top of the NFC North. There's a myriad of different options that this team could go in with the number 10 overall pick, but at the end of the day, I think that the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson made the right decision. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're a Bears fan, how do you feel about this move? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.